Alrighty then.
I have regrets.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, July 1st, 2019 Board of Selectmen, Highway Commissioners, Cemetery Commissioners meeting. First order of business, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started on our agenda, I know I speak for the entire board and for the residents of Dudley to note the passing of Chet Kalissa. There's nobody of a certain age in Dudley anymore that's life was not impacted by Chet Kalissa. His family started out on a family-owned dairy farm. He and his brother took it over. Chet got married. His stepchildren moved to town. Chet was involved in all aspects of the town, including our health inspector's job. I know at least one of his stepchildren continue to this day to work the farm. They sell hay off the farm. Chet died at 95, and that's why I say there's no one in town that cared about the town that did not know about Chet. Chet was a driving force behind Pierpont Meadows Sanctuary. He donated land that he owned in Oxford. He was actively involved with everybody. And I'll never forget, when I was on the planning board, when Tobin Farms came into play, Chet was at that meeting, and he was sitting against the back wall next to another gentleman who Chet obviously didn't know. Chet said something to the effect, "What a damn shame there's going to be houses on that farm." And the guy said, "Well, guess what? I own that farm." And Chet said, "Well, you're a damn shame." So I know I speak for the board. We send our sympathies to the Kalissa Tierney family. Anybody else? Mr. Joseph.
I think that he was an amazing man. He was an extraordinary man. And there's much that goes on in this town now that's attributable to Chet's knowledge and passion, both for the town and for agriculture and land conservation, etc. I'm going to suggest that we ask the town administrator to work with some volunteers, of which I believe there will be a good number, and come up with an appropriate way of honoring Chet. And I'm not going to suggest what that is, but his work needs to be memorialized by the town. And remember, I've said it many years ago, that the best things that we can give our children are roots and wings. And what Chet did for the town is deserving of being recognized as some of the roots and wings of this town. So I would ask that we do that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm not going to call that to a vote. I think that's
No, we don't have to.
excellent suggestion. Anybody else? First up on the agenda, acceptance of minutes, June 17, 2019. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the minutes of June 17, 2019 as written.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
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 Also, I should have recognized Town Council Attorney Michelle Randazzo present tonight with us also. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Next up, executive session minutes of June 17, 2019. I'm going to ask for an acceptance but not to release.
So
At this
moved.
time.
Second.
Mr. Joseph and Mr. Marcy. Any questions or concerns? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Next up, we have a Capital Improvement Committee reappointment. Bob Edmonds' term to expire 6/30/2022. Is Mr. Edmonds present? He's working. Mr. Administrator, everything's all set, paperwork in order?
Yes.
What's the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we reappoint Bob Edmonds to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee with the term to expire 6/30/2022.
Motion made.
Second.
Second by Mr. Siganovich to reappoint Bob Edmonds. Any questions or concerns? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Next,
Thank you, Bob.
Southern Worcester County Communications Center, Selectman to serve on the Board of Directors, an alternate tabled from 6/17/2019. What's the board's pleasure, Mr. Marcy?
Well, I'm willing to do that, but with the understanding that there's gonna be some days that I will, especially on the next meeting, that I might not be able to go to, because you know, my schedule at work is already booked a month or so in advance for that. It's August 2nd,
I think it's the 8th.
8th. We can look, but I may or may not be around yet. Have a look. But I'm willing to do that if it's a quarterly meeting, if Mr. Joseph will be my backup.
So why don't we make that a double appointment? Chair will entertain a motion to appoint Mr. Massey as our representative on the Southern Worcester County Communications Center with Mr. Joseph to serve as alternate. What's the board's pleasure?
So moved.
Mr. Sigenovich. Is there a second? Second. Mr. Johnson. Thank both our members for stepping up. It's a very important position. Any further questions or concerns? Mr. Massey?
Mr. Town Administrator, just
Can't
make
change
sure.
your mind.
Just make sure that I know when the schedule of those things are, and I can work.
Yeah,
with it.
I'll ask the director to loop you into all the email.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Happy
Mr.
to help.
Joseph?
Trying to get out of doing things, but this is important.
John, do you get the minutes and agendas yet?
From that,
Or
no,
the-
I do not.
Okay, I'm already on the email list,
Mm-hmm.
so we just need to make sure that
Yeah.
John gets added.
Yep, we'll take care of it.
All right.
All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Again, thank you, gentlemen.
Just gonna send an email.
Next up, Zoning Board of Appeals reappointment, George Slingo, term to expire June 30th, 2023. Is Mr. Slingo present?
No, but I'm gonna absolutely positively make that motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Joseph, second by Mr. Massey. Any questions or concerns? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thanks, George.
Thank George Slingo. He's been on that board a good number of years now. Not always been the easiest board,
Oh, that does a great job, too.
so it does. Next up, we have accept with regret resignation, cable camera operator, Patricia Batista. I'm in the process of relocating our home. I will no longer be able to provide video service to the library trustees after the next meeting, which is on Tuesday, June 25th. I've enjoyed working for the town and wish you well. Thank you for the technical support you have helped me with. Would it be okay to leave my key with, if I can bring it on? Best wishes, Patty Batista, and she's actually thanking Ted Barron for his assistance.
Chairman, I'm gonna move we accept her resignation with regret and sincerely thank her in writing for being a video camera operator.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept with regret. Can the Selectmen's office handle that letter? Thank you. All in favor, state aye.
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 Now, where would that leave us with them for video coverage? We're gonna have to obviously try to find somebody else, right?
I don't know much about it.
Okay.
Do we have anybody beside Ted and Fred?
No,
Didn't Brian used to do that?
he used to, but he
Oh,
doesn't.
okay.
Patty was just doing the library trustee meetings.
So if anybody out there wants to
Post it.
learn with some technology and help your town out and work with the library trustees, please contact the Selectmen's office.
We'll post it and so forth.
The 18 or
Could,
older.
could it be a student either at Shepherd Hill or Bay Path?
Yeah,
Does it
the
have to
18.
be,
Have to be 18.
What?
18 or older.
it does?
I was told.
Why? Why
Maybe
does it have to be 18 or older?
maybe times of the day. I know if you're under 18, you can't work at certain times or around certain objects.
That could very well be it.
Could be something might be too heavy. You
Can
never
we,
know.
Mr. Chairman, can we clarify if it can be someone under the age of 18? Because I sure as heck would like to see some younger people become involved besides the student selectman's position.
Yeah, absolutely. We can post for help and get clarification on any age issue. Bring that forward.
Can't argue with Mr. Joseph on that.
Can I just question? Is it simply
now.
running the mechanicals, or is there actually setup of equipment involved?
We'd have to, I don't know the actual technical aspects of it.
So, I mean, that does make a difference,
Okay.
because there, as has been pointed out, there are some restrictions on what people of certain ages, it's like 14, 15, and then 16 above, and then to 18. There's state and federal restrictions on what type of equipment they can operate.
being obstinate, is it possible that we could seek any students who may be interested to be mentored by Ted and/or by Fred, who may be approaching the age of 18, and maybe kind of ease them along until they are? We're safe in having them do some work?
Are you expecting that these are going to be unpaid volunteers?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Because that makes a difference as well.
Absolutely not. I'd pay them like we pay anybody
Okay.
else.
Mr. Chairman, could,
Fred said they don't get paid until they're actually on their own, so any kind of training will be on.
Right, so it's, I mean, mentoring is a program we've talked about, in fact, we talked about the candidates night.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, internship of some sort should be something we could look into, once we know what the requirements and the restrictions are.
Right, they'd have to work up some kind of,
Everything else is just speculation.
I'd like
till
to
then.
see that in whatever ways we can.
Maybe someone who's interested in that field, Mr. Chairman.
right, but an internship, we'd have to work out some kind of written agreement with
Job
Nichols.
description.
Right, we couldn't just bring somebody in. So we'll just look into it and get back to us.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Next up is public comments, citizens' comments. Anyone wishing to speak that's not on the agenda tonight that doesn't require a vote? Seeing none. Next up, Town Administrator's Report, Mr. Ruda.
Board members, good evening. I have a outline of my notes in your packet, per usual. I'm just going to skip right to items of note. Speak first about the streetlight project. The streetlight replacement project is nearing completion. We've added the changes that were overlooked in advance of the project. Chief Kochanowski and Assistant Chief Konechny were extremely helpful in verifying the location of some poll numbers and specific locations of the installation changes that we talked about earlier. Chief Wayner has consistently provided construction updates and traffic impact areas to me on a daily basis, and I've been able to repost that on social media. And the highway superintendent has been involved on a daily basis in supervising the contractor of the project. It's quite a large undertaking, and I couldn't be more pleased with the way the departments have been working together. The solar project is back on tonight's agenda. I just want to touch upon it. I did have an opportunity to speak briefly with Mr. Joseph about it at the end of last week, and I spent some time with Town Council reviewing the current Dudley Solar LLC contract and the proposed amendment. As the board recalls, the Dudley Solar LLC has requested that the contract be amended from 2,600 kilowatt DC to 2,408. After having discussed the amendment further with Town Council, some of the information that I received at the time of my transition has been further clarified. Specifically, the information related to the manner in which the town received revenue in the form of a pilot. As we all know, the land is privately owned, and the equipment that's placed on the land, namely the solar panels, are the source of the revenue. And that's a little bit different than what my original understanding was in terms of how our pilot program is structured. The agreement is for the town to receive $12,500 per megawatt DC based not upon actual generation, but based upon the capability of the panel. So, for example, if one panel is capable of generating 1 megawatt DC, the town receives $12,500 for the placement of that piece of equipment on the property. The contract calls for a 2% annual increase in the 1 megawatt DC payment of $12,500 annually, and that's over the course of a 20-year contract. The specific placement and amount of equipment on the land is based on the physical capacity of the land to accept the equipment and not on the capacity of the equipment to generate energy. So when the equipment construction had been completed, the contract called for a completion date to determine how much of the equipment had been able to, was engineered to fit on the land. In our case, the contract estimated a physical equipment capacity of 2,600 kilowatt DC. And the actual completed construction turned out to be just under 2,408. There is no intentional drawdown on generation capacity. And if there is now or in the future, it will have no impact on the contract as originally understood. When reviewing the amendment, Town Council noted that the completion date of the project had not been provided by Dudley Solar LLC within 30 days of the end of the construction. So Dudley Solar LLC has been paying based on a 2,600 kilowatt capacity since the completion date of the construction in 2017. Council suggests that the completion date was only recently provided about 3 weeks ago, and that we hold Dudley LLC to that date. The town did not lose, but only gain on the payments to date. And the contract provides for the same terms should Dudley Solar LLC increase the amount of equipment on the land, and provides for a reduction if the equipment is removed. It is the capacity to generate, rather than the meter generation, that determines the amount under this contract. In your packets, there's a email correspondence, which is going to come up. I think we placed it under 10B. I draw your attention to the subject line of the email, so that when we get to that, if you've had a chance over the course of the next few minutes to take a look at it, or want to discuss it further, we'll have a frame of reference. That's correspondence from the Town Council, KP Law, to this board. My recommendation is to sign the amendment as presented by Town Council, which is also in this packet tonight, and rely on the judgment of Town Council to hold Dudley Solar LLC to the completion date that was just recently provided.
So I'm going to ask the board's pleasure we hold off on questions or discussing this until it comes up under number 10. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of questions and then have it come up as an agenda item in 5 minutes, so how about we get through this other stuff and we'll come back.
It's going to come up later on the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Instead of going down with a bunch of questions now, that we can do it all at once. So I think we should just clean up this.
I brought it up now just for
As a
food for
report.
thought as we,
Oh, correct.
part of the report.
I just want anybody in the public that may be here for this issue and board members to think we're not going to take comments on it. Just for now, we're not going to go down that road.
Wage study's on the agenda again, right? That came back. Okay, so Mr. Chairman, our wage study, which is another recurring agenda item, Webster has requested that we share the current data of what we pay our employees, and that includes the 2% COLA that was received after July 1st, because they're conducting their own compensation study. And I've agreed to assist them with that, and they're going to be sharing their findings with us when they complete their study, so it'll give us another source of data to take a look at. And, of course, Attorney Randazzo is here tonight.
Whoops.
Mr.
What?
Joseph.
What happened?
Are we still going to, is it still our intent to pursue an A and B database, where A is towns with similar budgets, and B are towns that would geographically provide competition for our employees? Is that still our intent? Because I'm not going to vote for anything recommended on the basis of the Nichols study.
Right.
Remember, let's reiterate it, we appreciate it, but I think the data is faulty,
So,
therefore the assumptions are faulty.
that's why I brought it back up on the agenda tonight, Mr. Chairman, because I need some direction from the board as to how you want me to proceed. And I'm going to keep bringing it up on the agenda until I have specific direction in terms of how to proceed.
Mr. Chairman?
One sec. I think at the last meeting, we kind of all agreed with Mr. Joseph's suggestions that we needed different and more information. And I, for one, am 100% agreement with Mr. Joseph. We can certainly share the data as produced, and they can share their data as produced,
Absolutely.
with the caveat, it's not the end of the road. You know, just to make up a number, if Webster came in and their numbers are 5% across the board from what we had, it doesn't mean we adjust our data to match
I know that.
they
Yeah,
have,
and
and
I-
vice versa. I'm
and
sure they wouldn't match down.
I would not want to delude Webster into thinking that the data we give them is enactable data in our minds,
Right.
because it's not.
I'm sure the
Well, no,
administration-
Mr. Chairman, the data that we're providing is actual real figures as to what we currently pay our employees. There's nothing,
Okay,
there's
nothing from the
no
report.
projected, no
Okay.
percentiles, nothing like that.
Yeah, the salaries that we pay.
So the data is definitely real, and that's what they're gonna provide to us as well.
Right, but we're not talking about any suggestion, whether inferred or real.
No.
Yep,
At the
okay.
conclusion of Nichols.
And Mr. Chairman, like I said, we're gonna keep bringing it up because I think part of the issue with this, why it's been going on for several years, is we're just continually kicking the can. I need to know specifically what the board would like me to do, and I will execute that.
Mr. Massey?
I agree, and I do agree, we need all those extra data points to make decisions on it, but at some point, you know, and now that I've been sitting here for several years, I know that prioritizing what the town administrator actually works on would help him get stuff done. So my question to my fellow board members is, where would you prioritize this over other stuff we have going on right now? Knowing that this is an important part.
Well, in the absence of a codified list, I would say it's certainly not at the top, as far as I'm concerned. I
Yeah, you
mean,
know,
Personnel Board can pick up the ball on a lot of this and bring forward suggestions through the administrator. As the administrator says, the board decided to try to find comparable municipalities. Can you assist gathering the data? But then it would be up to the administrator to collate it.
That's fine.
both databases are out there, I'm sorry. Okay?
Mr. Chairman, sorry, I'm not sure what problem we're trying to solve. Do we have excess attrition? Do we have, I need to know what the problem we're trying to solve.
Here's the problem as I see it, in my opinion only. We have elected positions in town that people run for. They know the salary when they run. We have people that we hire through elected officials or the Board of Selectmen with the Personnel Board. People get hired, they know what they're getting paid. And sometimes they get in and they think, gee, it's a lot more than I thought for what I'm making. And other times they think, they see or they hear data that's presented at another town, similar position. And I think our biggest issue since I've been on the board when this came up is, if you want to come, I'm just going to pick Auburn because it starts with an A. If you're going to compare our town administrator, for example, to Auburn and look at salaries, you're really comparing apples to oranges. And that's sometimes what has happened in the past. We've seen local, even the towns that are contiguous to us, none of them are even close to our demographics. So, and the issue's always been, I guess, market value is a good way to put it, perceived compensation, and some people get in and they say, wait a minute, this is more than I thought for what I'm getting paid. So it's something we've been trying to address.
I guess I'm still confused. Do we have excess attrition? Do we have a lot of job openings? Do we have paid positions that we cannot fill?
I think the easy answer is, and I don't have the data, would be no. I can't think of people, overabundance of people who have left that, for that reason. I mean, if you come to town hall fairly regular, we see the same faces. Sometimes what we've done is we've combined positions. People have gotten raises that way. They've gone to, some positions went to part-time, staff. That used to be full, so there's been some adjustments there, and some have never been adjusted. They've been the annual performance-based merits. And like I said, I think the feeling is that they're not compensated properly. Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'd like to put it this way. To properly address a problem, you need to define the current state. So the current state would be the market analysis, and in manufacturing, we use like a Hayes study or something like that. But it's usually based on a problem. Unable to find candidates to fill a position, having to replace people at a higher than industry rate. I like to see that. I'd like to see it portrayed as a problem statement with the the data that backs up the current state before we speculate. I don't want to solve problems that are not the root cause of whatever we really need to work on.
Well, I don't have the data in front of me, but we can easily get it. I don't think there's been a position that we posted, non-elected, since I've been on the board, that hasn't generated an abundance of applications. We've never, as far as I know, we've never gone back out to bid on a job. We've always had a sufficient pool at posted rates. So, yeah, I mean, we can drill down a little deeper and see what we get. Fire and EMS.
You guys had me do a salary survey when I first started here. They make a list, I think I have a copy of it, for municipalities. They're categorized, I think it's 7 or 8 categories based on community type. So you can easily take, I think we were like a category 7 or 8 in Dudley, and all the cities and towns in Massachusetts listed in that category are like communities. So it's easy to take those communities, lump them all together and find out what the salaries are, and you get an accurate survey that way.
And where'd you find that information?
I think I got it at an MMA meeting or something that I went to with one of the previous administrators. That's how I did my, my survey. And that way, like you said, it's not comparing apples to oranges, it's comparing apples to apples.
Right, I mean, you probably fire too, I mean, police would obviously know too. You've lost some candidates to not contiguous communities because of salary, but some were just opportunities, like bigger department.
Like I said, because of that survey you did for the fire department, I mean, the board's been very supportive of public safety, all of you, but if you do the survey that way, it actually improved. We've come a long way in the 8 years that I've been here, and I think if you do the town survey the same way, that would be the right way to do it.
Maybe you can touch base with the chief. Maybe you can look back in his records and find some of his databases that he was able to access. And Mr. Johnson's always available if you need a selectman to help you.
If anyone needs help defining the problem statement, I'm more than willing.
It's right up your alley. Mr. Massey.
Oh, I'm sorry, Paul had his hand up
Paul.
first, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Jay, I thought everybody understood that there are problems, and we've had problems, and among the problems are when Chief Kokonowski came in, we couldn't hire and keep EMTs, never mind advanced paramedics. And it was because we weren't offering them what was competitive. We have lost potential police officers to other departments. We've lost police officers, full-time police officers. Bruce Wikowski is one, for example, to other departments for promotions and for more money, or for just more money. We have I think another problem is we have a tendency to fund positions by the seat of our pants. Mr. Ruta's predecessor was hired at a significant increase over what we were paying his predecessor because we weren't getting the kind of candidates we wanted. The same thing happens now. We get requests from departments to increase a particular person's salary, and the justification is that they're less than other people. So we get these spotty surveys, spotty, favorable, limited surveys. And that's no way to organizationally run your employee program. So we do have problems that we need to solve, long-term and short-term. I hope that helps define the problem.
Jim, the only thing that helps me define the problem would be the facts, to your point, the study. What is the attrition rate? Losing candidates, is something that happens at a certain rate for lots of reasons, and it's not necessarily always money. Sometimes it's culture, sometimes it's the quality of leadership. I've lost good candidates to better leaders in their mind. So I'm always interested in really knowing what the problem is and how can you define it, because nothing speaks to seat of the pants by saying we all know what the problems are. I want to see it on a piece of paper. I want to see it defined, and I want it somehow numerically categorized.
Mr. Chairman, I need to respond to that. You can quantify some things. You cannot quantify everything. I would be curious to see how you would propose to quantify the morale of the employees when they know, because they talk with their counterparts in other departments, when they know what other people are making. How do you quantify that negative?
Before I call on Jay, the easiest thing, as I kind of alluded to at the beginning, is when people get hired, when they get hired, they know what they're getting paid. It's discussed. When they're elected, they know what they're getting paid. So if they do the job and they feel they're undercompensated, there's avenues to try to be compensated, but then we end up with what's kind of been going on. For the last couple of years, as you said, his predecessor tried to do a position-by-position review, and he had what he called the 80% rule, the Dudley discount, because we don't have the revenue, nor do we have the workload that other towns may or may not have. So that when someone comes to us and says they have, well, my office only has one assistant, this town has two. And the answer invariably is, well, they probably handle a little bit more workload. That's when we get into the apple and oranges. As you said, you want data, we want similar communities. Fire chief gave us some excellent ideas. I just think, get the ball rolling a little bit. Let's keep it rolling. Let's get the data, do what we can to find more information. And it's not gonna be a back burner issue. I mean, I don't think it's number one on the list, but I don't think it's the bottom of the pile either. I think there's a lot more important things as we transition with our new administrator that we have to worry about. And for example, the solar agreement, to me, that's a little more important than completing more data towards a salary study. So things like that, I think, should be occupying the forefront of the day. Not saying nothing is not important enough to be discussed, but there's other things, time-sensitive things also. So I think we just continue to try to collate the data. Be nice to see what another town pays that's next to us. But in the end, it's gonna sit with us or ride with us. Jay?
Are we going to set a time frame, expectations of action items, and when they'll be completed?
Mr. Administrator, how much time you think you need to get more data? Next meeting, 2 meetings? It's like about a month or 2 on it?
Well, it depends on the data I'm collecting. If you want me to have fresh data, such as you want to compare the neighboring town, I have to wait for them to complete their survey. A lot of towns, now it's July 1st, a lot of towns are assigning cost of living adjustments, salary step increases, and so forth. It's going to take some time to get those numbers finalized to have an accurate set of data set.
Well, I certainly don't, at this point, I don't think we need to see this on every agenda. Why don't we put like a 30-day window on it, and you can come back and say, I've gotten this much, I've gotten this more than I thought, less than
30
I,
days, okay.
give it like a month.
I know Mr. Massey wants to speak, but Jonathan's got to be bailed out on this.
Oh, no.
As I see, Jonathan's got to be bailed out. As I look at the emails and the stuff that he's dealing with right now, and there's a lot, and there's a lot of serious, important stuff in terms of policy, procedures, external deadlines that we're not meeting. I have no problem with this not being a high priority.
Right, so we'll.
I think he's got enough fires. to
Mr.
put out.
Chairman, what would help me right now, and I know it's not on the agenda, so we don't really want to take a vote, but I think that if the board supported the premise that I've put out, that we stop assigning random increases for anyone who asks, and we have a more centralized process in order to do that. That will immediately stop the bleeding. I've already spoken to the Personnel Board about it, and I would hope that every member of the board agrees that we have to come up with some methodology to assign salary increases, raises, and so forth,
Absolutely.
instead of the way we've consistently been doing it for decades.
Absolutely, I agree, John. I agree with that premise. We can't continue to go forward with one person advocating for another. It's got to be, there's a reason. I mean, we have positions within our existing personnel bylaws that are, I'm not sure of all the acronyms, I don't want to speak the wrong ones,
After Mr. Marcy speaks, I'm going to make a motion.
but those jobs are already,
That'll make it easier for Jonathan to understand what the board wants to do.
right, those jobs are already, they're already rated and they've already been categorized at a certain level. And for people to come in wanting to get a raise or to recategorize a job, I agree with Mr. Johnson, it just can't be, okay, you got it. We need to know why, and get the data behind it and justify it.
And we got a plan for it too, Mr. Chairman.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Mr.
Marcy.
Chairman, which is where I was going with that. Since, the new fiscal year is here and the budget's already set, I think we have some time to put some thought into this, not, to make sure that we have something in place, so like to Jonathan's point, we're not doing this for one person and not another. And if I had to categorize Mr. Johnson and others, like how, my view of how Dudley is, it's more, we don't have a lot of people who move around a lot. So I think as far as which database is more important, I would say it's the surrounding towns in a way, because if you look at fair market value or fair, local market value for a position, then you have, what the other people are. So you have you want to make it, so retention and, acquisition of new people as we grow from all this economic development we'd like to have, right? So we want to be able to attract and keep people as well. But I think it's also depending on what the role is. Like an EMT is a lot harder to find. A good EMT is a lot harder to find than someone who does something else that is more like that. So you have to take into account what role we're looking for as well on that. So, I mean, that's what I would say. So I would say to Mr. Rudo, pick a time, like, as you get through your backlog to kind of, find this data. I think, like I said, the ones around us, I think, will be primary in my book. And then the second one would be budget and population size for the other ones, just as a sample to kind of control against.
Gary?
I understand what Mr. Johnson is saying about what's the problem. Do we have a lot of people that are leaving? Do we have trouble attracting people? Because in private business, if there isn't a problem, nothing's changed. And I understand this isn't private business, so I just don't know how much of a priority this is. I see a lot of other priorities here coming down the pike that go ahead of this. I mean, if we put this off till September, August, October, I wouldn't have a problem with any of that. And as far as the study, I don't know what we paid for it, if we did pay anything, but it was too much. Yeah, not a fan of that study at all, for a lot of reasons, and I won't take any more time talking about it.
Yeah, well done.
It's already been said. I'm not gonna repeat what others have said.
One more thing, Mr. Chairman, before Paul makes his motion. I mean, I want everybody to understand that, you have to pay your people, right? In any business, whatever it is, commercial, manufacturing, municipal, you have to pay your people. So it's important to have the right data so people are informed and you're doing right by the town and for your employees. That's my philosophy on my teams. You gotta make sure you're being fair.
And to that, before I go to Mr. Joseph, to that point, I think we have been. Like I said, Greg was doing his own fact-based, position by position. We did a few at a time, if you recall. We adjusted Michelle at one time, our secretary. We adjusted a few other staff positions. So we have always, we developed that merit pool, which,
Right.
was a tool to help people that deserved it begin to slide up that scale. I wasn't always in favor of everything that we paid out, but, I mean, That was something we tried to incorporate, so.
To recognize, Mr. Chairman, people's contributions to, doing stuff we need done.
Right. Mr. Joseph?
Yeah, I think that our problem is clear, and it's exemplified by the way the board, or the town through the board, and the town administrator, administer our labor and management responsibilities, and that is by the seat of our pants. I'm going to make I would like to make a motion, and I am going to make a motion, that the town not award any increases at this time beyond cost of living and contracted, collective bargaining obligations, that we not get into merit, that we not consider individual requests for increases until we have some data that will help us make better decisions.
Mr. Chairman, can we hold that thought, because that, we can actually, the wage study appears later in the agenda, that would be, I think, the time to take the vote on this, we're still in the TA report right now.
So, want to put that off, Paul?
Under
till-
old business, oh, I
We
see
we
it.
can just execute it when we come to that point.
Till we get to
No,
10, which will be after the solar.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
I didn't want to have
Just
to
as-
have Dean provide paramedic services to town council, so.
Your annual, your meeting reports, Jonathan, are certainly generating motionable thoughts.
Spirited discussion.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the final thing on my report is that Attorney Randazzo is here tonight, and we have a few items in executive to discuss. And my town administrator's report looks a little spartan this time around, but I've spent a lot of time on legal issues that are better discussed in executive until we release the minutes to the public. So thank you.
Motion to accept the town administrator's report.
So moved.
Second and third, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, around town, none. Again, we're gonna really try to amp that up again in the fall. License and permits, one-day malt wine license for the Council on Aging, Margaret Boussier, Council of Aging Director, requests a one-day wine and malt license on the following: July 26, 2019, August 30th, September 27th, October 25th, November 22nd, December 20th, all from 12 to 2:30 for the Italian luncheons in the Senior Center.
So moved. Second.
Motion made and seconded to award one day for the Council on Aging. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Next up, we have two separate agenda items for the same business in town. Yeah, one-day alcohol liquor licenses for Doldry Inc., DBA Drafter Sports Cafe, 35 Chase Ave, Dudley, Mass. Owner Crystal Kistner is a request for a one-day all-alcohol liquor license for Saturday, August 17, 2019, from 12 to 9 in the area outside for Ride for Dime Memorial Show and Veteran Fundraiser. I bring up Crystal and her faithful brother Ted.
Faithful.
Well, he's always here with her.
Yes. Before you start, you guys need to come for around town sometime and tell everybody what you do.
That's a great idea.
Please and thank you.
Absolutely.
I won't make it a condition of this, but
let us know.
Strongly worded suggestion.
yes.
Mr. Administrator, so what do we have here?
First of all, have we had a chance, Chief, to take a look at this? And it passes your muster? Okay, I wouldn't turn it over to the applicants then, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening. Please,
Hi.
we know who you are, but please identify yourselves and could go out.
Crystal Kistner?
Ted Kistner,
So what do you folks have going on?
doing a outdoor concert to benefit veterans in different areas throughout the country. Really, the people who put on this Ride for Dime event have spots that they do them down in New Jersey, Texas, different areas throughout the country. And they approached us about doing one here to start branching it out a little further and getting more of the word out of what they're doing.
Okay, well, based on your presentation, you have estimate 200 to 500 guests, 10 to 15 vendors. Outdoor music would start at 12:15 and at 9 o'clock sharp. 10 security officers, does that mean a combination of local police or 10 your folks?
10 of our folks that'll be all on radios and be able to talk back and forth to keep an eye on different areas, make sure everything goes smoothly as we, kind of like we do down at the bar regularly now, but just a little bit more.
How many of our town police?
That was next. Chief, want to come up?
Chief Warner?
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm going to finalize. I'd spoken to Ms. Kistner before, and it's one of the things we'll finalize on that, depending on how that goes. So you might have 1, 2, depending how that goes. And it would be for the duration of the event.
What do you estimate, Chief, we might need for town police?
It's always hard to tell. I mean, and I guess we'll probably get a little bit better feel as we get closer to the event as far as what we're going to have for a crowd and everything else.
2?
That's kind of how we gauge it. Yeah, I'd say at least 1, but you're looking more
Not
towards
less
2.
than 2.
I can go with that if that's what you want to
Okay.
do. That's fine, yep.
Yeah, I'm not willing to support this unless there are a minimum of 2 town police, Dudley Town Police, because they have arrest powers. And security people don't, not within this jurisdiction. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, have you signed a contract with these people?
Have we signed a contract with these people?
Right.
I have worked with these people on and off for over a
It's a
decade.
yes or a no. It's a yes or a no.
No, there was no need to because we've worked
Okay.
together enough.
Would you consider approaching them? Certainly, this needs to happen all over the country. But I would like to see some of that money, some percent of that, because you're doing the work. I'd like to see that go to our veterans agent, because I'm going to tell you right now, we have as many people who are homeless veterans in this town and Webster as most other, or many other places in the country.
Absolutely. And if you
So
can
if
give me
you
some
could
contacts
negotiate
of some
that-
people locally to talk to, I'll get that all set up
Well,
for
that's,
sure.
we can hook you up, Michelle. We can hook them up with Steve, and we'll do it quickly.
Perfect.
All right, hopefully you'll be able to negotiate something for the local people.
No, absolutely, and they do like to get it more to, in each area that they do it, they like to try and make it more local centric, not so much nationwide.
Perfect,
So-
perfect.
If I have numbers that I can get in touch with them with, that'll make that transition a lot smoother, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What's the rest of the board feel about those suggestions?
No, I'm looking at the map they gave us here in the stage. If I'm looking at this right, the music, the speakers, what have you, is going to be going away from the populated area towards the woods in the back.
Absolutely, toward the woods into no man's
They
land.
do that, they've done that regularly
Yeah,
now.
I've done that.
Yeah, but I just see everything here, it seems all contained right there. It's not sparsely spread out where it would be it looks not easy to manage, but better than if it's spread out.
Over the years that we took a little break from doing the shows outside, but when we first started, the area that we did it at first, it was too big. It didn't make sense, whereas this area here, if you look to the left side there, where it says vendor booths, there's a stone wall that goes all along there and keeps people contained on that side as well as having the building on the other.
Couple more questions, if you don't mind. Wristbands for over 21, 1 drink per wristband sold.
Meaning, once they get their wristband, they go up to the bar, they can only order 1 drink. If they can't go up and order 2 and say, oh, this one's for my buddy. No, your buddy has to be there with his wristband
Nice.
too in order to get.
Tip certified bartenders, the bar's gonna be outside?
We would like to set one up outside as well as our one inside, which is why we asked for the outdoor permit.
Okay. That's it I got.
Mr. Massey?
Chief,
Excuse me.
are you okay with having two people there? I mean, can we support that? Yes. Okay, I want to make sure, just based on a coverage. It's a great idea by
Big
Paul, but I want to
details.
make sure. You might have had plans and, so, okay.
Yeah,
One
that's
other
some-
thing, we are doing pre-sale tickets, so we'll have a much better idea.
Oh, good.
Right now, we're just hoping, that's what we get. So we'll definitely have a better idea of how many people as the ticket sales start coming
I
in.
mean, this is the first time you've done an outside function. You know, work with the chief
A
and,
few years.
Yeah, it's been a
And you
few years.
oh, you've
We-
done it before, though.
Yeah, we've done it before
Right.
and worked with
Couple
the
times.
chief in the past, a
Right.
couple of times with these outdoor events in the same area, and it's worked out well in the past, so.
Right.
Turns Dudley into a destination for a day.
There you
We're
go.
trying.
There you go.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to back off my insistence that there be 2 Dudley police officers. But instead, I mean, if they get 150 people or 75 people, once an idea of the number of people, chief, that will be there, I would leave it to the chief's judgment.
That's what I prefer,
Right.
Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any further questions for the applicants? Anything else you folks want to add?
Just hope that everybody comes out and enjoys the day.
Or for weather like we had the other day? Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve a one-day all alcohol liquor license and a one-day outdoor entertainment license to Dudley Inc., DBA Thereafter Sports Cafe, 35 Chase Ave, Dudley, Mass. On Saturday, August 17, 2019, from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. In the outside area for the Ride for Dime Memorial Show and Veterans Fundraiser.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. I made a mistake. I said you guys are up twice. It's a Scribner's error on the... it
Oh,
looks
I went
like-
ahead and just, because they're,
But they're the same day.
I know, I approved them both.
But it's the same thing.
Oh, yeah. They need one to be outside.
Outdoor entertainment and.
Oh, your
Yeah,
motion
my
was
That
motion
would
both.
be
Okay.
C together.
Okay. Oh, your motion was B and C, okay.
Sorry. Should have been clear.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys. Good luck.
Thanks for your efforts.
I didn't realize you were combining the motion. Sorry. Next up, we have another one-day all-alcohol liquor license, J&S Blues Inc., DBA Cindy's Pub, 6 Chase Ave, Dudley, Mass. Owners Jeff and Sherry Cindy. Request for a one-day all-alcohol liquor license for Saturday, July 13th, 2019, from 1 to 6 in the parking lot for a cornhole tournament. Sherry, would you like to come up?
Sherry.
Hello,
Nice to see you. You are
Sherry Cine.
Mr. Administrator.
Well, let's hear from,
Okay, we'll hear from the
let's hear
applicant.
from the applicant.
Sherry, what do you have planned?
We're just gonna have a cornhole tournament. I'm not expecting a lot of people. We don't have any music or outdoor entertainment planned. We are just gonna hope for a nice day and have it outside, so I wanted the option that they would be able to bring their drink outside. I'm expecting maybe 20 to 30 people for that. I'm kind of seeing how it's gonna go, because in the fall, I'd like to plan one for, I do a lot of fundraising for the Thompson Little League. So I'm just gonna have somebody help me run it, see how it goes, and then, hope to do it again in the fall. So, just hoping to get the license for the day.
Chief Wayner. Have you talked to her about this?
No. Because I thought I'd
Wanna come up,
here
Chief?
first, I don't know.
Paul, while he's coming up, question?
Yeah, I just, this is one of those things where it's a first-time effort. We don't want to discourage creative entertainment, but I would only vote for this if there is agreement that there will be a Dudley police officer present. It's outside. Your attendance is unknown. in the past, we've had issues with outside activities and alcohol being brought outside at this establishment. So if the understanding is that we can have one, or there will be one Dudley police officer, I'll vote for it. If not, I will not vote for it.
My question's too, Paul, to Sherry. You say in the parking lot. Are you talking like if towards the back of your building?
Yeah, towards the back end. So when it was set up before, there's two doors and one door is not used. When we bought the building, they said that other door was for bringing alcohol outside. Like you could, the old laws, like you could bring it out one door but not in another door. So I was just gonna rope off like pretty much the whole parking lot. Like you can't go into the parking lot with the alcohol. So there'd be caution tape running from that door, which is next to the main entrance door, next to the deck. And it would run across the parking lot where the volleyball is. And there would be signs like no alcohol beyond this point, because the rest of it is all fenced in, wrapping around the building. Like you can't get in or out. Like there is a gate, but it's locked. So it would be kind of contained in that area.
So is that where they do the horseshoes and stuff now? Is that horseshoes in that
That's
area?
where we plan on being.
Chief, you comfortable right now with some kind of conditional approval based on if you give us a final review? Or-
Yeah, I think I can probably go over it with a little bit further with them, because I wouldn't have too big of an issue if it was, getting a crowd of 20 people or something, and just something small that's contained outside. If it did become a little bit bigger, or there was entertainment and other things of that nature, it could be a bigger issue. But I can certainly review it with them a little further as it gets closer.
Sherry, here's my question. If you're anticipating, just say 20, you say 20 or 30, is that participants, or is that like if a couple comes and one's in it and one's watching, that you're using that number?
I was thinking participants.
All right, because would there be a way, and would it be fair,
Right.
to delineate, like, just say John Doe's in the bar having a couple of
Right.
beers, he says, oh, I can go outside and drink and watch the cornhole tournament.
Right.
So should we have a way of delineating participants in the tournament to,
I don't know if we can do that,
like,
you know?
I mean, where does
I mean, that might make people like say, hey, I want to join in too.
right, give them
You
some
know,
incentive?
And like I said, I don't know, I don't expect a lot of people. I'm just saying, okay, if I can, this person can bring his crowd that they play in leagues weekly, and then it goes good, and then I can get my Little League people to come like in the fall, and then add to that, and then he said he'll donate half to the Little League. I'm just kind of seeing, do people like, it's a big thing now. Are they gonna come? Are they gonna, it's an older crowd, how it's gonna go.
Here's my thinking, and maybe, I'm trying to think of things, I used to be in the industry to protect. If I
Right.
was a permittee, I don't want to see you, similar to what happened in the past when you were
Right.
expecting a certain size crowd, and you guys, not, outside of your control, got overwhelmed.
Right.
I don't want to see that happen again to you where you end up paying a heavy price. So I think if we let her work with the chief, I think if the board is okay with it, we give her a conditional approval where the chief can, if we don't get an absolute yes from the chief.
Hey, I'm not gonna vote for that, but I'm gonna tell you why. All right? This is outside. If you're gonna do something outside, let people drink outside, then the likelihood is, with good weather, you'll have more than 20 people drinking outside. I don't know where the estimate of 20 or 30 comes from. I don't know what the basis is for that decision. But having no track record, I'm not willing, I will not vote for it without one Dudley police officer there.
Oh, no, we'll definitely have a Dudley police officer. I'm just trying to think.
Just one, that's all I'm saying.
I'm just trying to think, if there's 20 people participating, each one brings a spouse or a couple or a guest, will they be allowed to go out also? Are we gonna try to limit it to the participants in the tournament? Because if it's 20 in the tournament, but there's 40 people that wanna watch, all of a sudden, like I said, I'm just trying to think as a person that was in that.
So one police officer couldn't do watch over 40 people?
I just don't know. How would you feel, chief, about something like that?
Oh, yeah, for a crowd that size, yeah, that would be fine.
So you wouldn't have an issue if it was just anybody outside, not just anybody, not just...
No, I'm assuming
participants?
I'm assuming you'd have more than just the participants out there, because You know, why would you have anything, either volleyball or basketball or something? I'm sure somebody would watch whatever the event is going on, so you're going to have more than just the participants that are out there. A question I would ask is, are there any establishments in town currently with an outside license or an outside provision on their license?
No.
I know we used to have some places in town that had that, so I don't know if those had
Doesn't
expired, if that
88's,
was there.
doesn't 88's have a permit for that patio out back?
Yeah, but it's fully
On the
enclosed.
patio.
Their deck
It's an
is,
extension.
Fully enclosed.
it's extension.
Okay, look, I'm just saying this, that
But this wouldn't be an extension, that's why I'm here, you know,
If
like
this-
my patio, on my deck, I can,
if my memory serves me correctly, if there's another problem for you, or with the establishment, you're gonna lose your license permanently. That's the only step left.
right.
Do you wanna run that risk? Why would you not simply agree, okay, let's have one police officer there?
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with it or
Okay.
anything, I'm just wondering, like, you know, if, like you said, I might have 40 people, would one be enough?
Right.
And I don't wanna
think,
see
but I'm
that
not a
happen.
police
I don't wanna see that,
Yeah, and then the other thing is, you know, I'm also coming, like, would this be allowed? Maybe this time I don't let them drink outside at all, like, see how it goes. Would it
It's up to you.
been busier if we had it, and save it for when I do the actual fundraiser for my cause, you know what I mean? So that's another possibility.
well, we didn't request this one day. You're the one that's requested it.
Yeah, I know.
If you wanna do it, then you should have one police officer there.
Okay.
And there should be no questions about that, just for the protection of your license. All right? So, that's just my position, I'm gonna shut up.
Carrie?
What's the capacity of the area? I'm trying to picture it in my head.
Of the
And I
outside,
can't, yeah, the capacity of the area you're going to have the
Well,
tournament,
there-
as far as people.
I'd have to exactly measure or bring like a plot plan, but, you know, we do have one full-size volleyball court on the land, as well as surrounding land near that. And then we have eight horseshoe pits with the, you know, whatever the official length is between those and then the
100
set-
people, 150, 200?
I wouldn't say 200, maybe 100. I would have to be honest, measure it for
Okay.
you. I'm not
I-
really.
I just think if there was a cap on the amount of people, you might alleviate
Right.
some concerns.
And we have had one outdoor permit before. We did have police and EMT there because it was a boxing event for our cause. So we put the rink on the volleyball court and we, you know, roped it off, but we had quite a few people for that. But they were also sitting in the parking lot too, you know. So I would have to measure it out to be.
Do you want a
exact.
motion?
Everybody good with questions?
Well, does anybody, yeah.
Mr. Administrator, anything you want to add?
I think the best course of action is to work it out with the police chief, and
All right,
if he agrees to it, we have a police officer there.
I'm gonna move that we grant the license to J&S Blue, DBA Cindy's Pub, for an outdoor cornhole tournament. I never thought I'd say that. On July 13th, 2019, with the caveat that there be one Dudley police officer on duty during the event.
Motion
Change
made.
that to a minimum of one? Because that way, if the chief decides,
More than one,
A
I
minimum.
would change that to a minimum of one.
Right, that way if something were to happen and someone's on duty, they can always call and say, we need another guy, or if
so they
even
don't have
Cindy's
to
calls.
tag each other out.
You know, public safety is always paramount,
Correct.
always paramount. So I think Kerry's suggestion that there be a minimum of one, probably one would be enough. But a minimum of one, then I would vote for this. That's why I made the motion.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Mr. Massey?
Can we say, or on recommendation of the chief? Added to that?
No, I don't want to set a precedent
I mean,
of an
Okay.
outdoor event with no basis for an estimate on attendance. I'm not willing to get involved in that kind of precedent. Remember, we only act on facts. There are no facts here. There's an estimate. All right? And some of you know from past experience that Sunny's in this ownership, who's done a good job lately, they can't afford one more violation.
Yeah.
The only action left by this board, if there's a violation, is permanent revocation of their license. And I don't want to see that done to any business. I don't even want to make it available to happen.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments from the discussion? Close the discussion and call the matter to a vote. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Good luck.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a continuation of a public hearing from our previous meeting. Class 2 license, secondhand motor vehicle. Amar Abdulki, DBA Tony's Auto Sales, 121 West Main Street. Property owners Marty Niski. Continue from 6/17 at 7/11. Is the applicant present? Applicant is not present. With the board's discretion or approval, I continue the public hearing due to the fact the applicant's not here. And please contact the applicant if they can't make it for the next meeting. We will reject their request.
Mr. Chairman, I'll also bring to your attention, there's a letter. I don't know if you had a chance to read it yet. You don't have to read it publicly, but it's in your packet. The board would not be able,
It's from Nelson.
I wouldn't recommend that the board act on this tonight anyway.
Well, this is an interesting one. Do we know why the applicant's not here?
We do not.
Did we know why the applicant was not here last time?
Oh, no. The applicant, I called the applicant this morning to tell him that there are other issues that need to be addressed before the selectmen approve this license.
There are other issues?
Yes.
Well, can we be informed? Because I'm gonna say right
That
now,
letter, Mr. Joseph, is right in your, there's a letter in your packet that
Yep.
describes the other issues from the building
the building
department.
department?
That one.
Is it in the executive session part?
No.
Have it.
well, you know what, so the
It's,
public,
there's an issue with,
I may see it, but I want the public to hear.
okay, there's an
What the
issue
other
with a
issues are.
potential
I'll give it
brownfield
right back to you.
location.
I will read the letter from Nelson. To whom it may concern, I've received a request for a Class 2 motor vehicle sale license located at 121 West Main Street, Dudley, Mass. That area is zoned light industrial 43 with a business 15 overlay district. Both of these zoning districts have motor vehicle sales as permitted use. So this will be allowed per section 2.0302 of use by district chart of the Town of Dudley zoning bylaws. After review of the plan provided for Nelson and per the regulations of the Town of Dudley, which required 9-foot by 20-foot for parking space, the current plan provided have 23 parking spaces listed. With this plan and proposal, needs now is a major site plan review by the planning board. Also, due to the location of the property, it is in the Aquifer Protection District and will require permission from the Water Sewer Board. At this time, the Water Sewer Department has not been notified, and the town planner has not been contacted to being the process of the site plan review. One other item that has come to our attention is the particular property is a brownfield site, and now this will require the Board of Health and possibly DEP. Further investigation into this matter will be required. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact the office. Respectfully, Nelson Burlingame, Commissioner of Building Zoning Agent. So that was the information you provided the applicant. I think that probably explains why he's not here.
I mean, did they respond? Did they
No.
say?
I left a message.
So, again, maybe it's not the prudent thing to do, but I'll just ask the boards, continue to the next meeting. If the applicant does not appear nor respond, we deny his application for further information. They can do the process the right way.
We deny it for further information.
We can do that now if you want.
We can ask our town council, Mr. Chairman, what she recommends.
Mr. Chairman, my thought process is he hasn't showed up to 2 meetings to talk about this. And there's a little bit of a laundry list there of hurdles he's got to climb over. I mean,
And look at the date of this letter.
yeah, we've,
I've
June
left
22nd.
messages.
I mean, we want businesses in town, but we want people that want to, and not just, well, I'll stop
You know
before
what?
I get in trouble.
I'm willing to table this for one more meeting. If they remain uncommunicative to the building inspector and/or to this board, then I would not hesitate to recommend that we deny the application.
All right with that, Mr. Chairman.
I am too, but I guess while she's here, I might as well ask. Is that a good course, Attorney Randazzo, or should we just outright reject it now?
I would postpone it
Give
for
one
one,
more chance.
table it for one more meeting, and have a directed follow-up, to the extent that you can, probably by mail, quite frankly, that there are these issues that need to be discussed and addressed. I mean, zoning, whether or not, any of the class 1, 2, or 3 auto licenses, zoning considerations obviously come into play. This is the first I've seen this letter, so I'm gonna defer to the building inspector that he's evaluated the zoning requirements. Whether or not some of these other issues about DEP and otherwise, I mean, I think we just need to look at that further, but
And-
zoning certainly is a concern.
And going back a few years, a major site plan review was nothing to, it's not a simple process, so we won't see these people for a while. I wouldn't even think while those folks take care of their business.
Well, and also, the issuance of a license doesn't necessarily mean that it satisfies all
Right.
requirements under any other applicable state or
Right.
local law.
Why would we even consider issuing a license with what we have in front of us?
Oh, that might be a decision, that might be the grounds for us to make a final decision.
Right. So the
So,
board's,
you're gonna table it automatically, no votes required?
oh, we have to continue the public hearing.
Are you gonna continue the public hearing and no motion can be made?
Need again, yeah.
Continue with the,
Do all, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, do all these abutters need to be notified that it's being continued?
no, I think once they're notified once, unless we go through the process again. So I think with the caveat that whoever's responsible for notifying the applicant, whether it's the planning board about site plan review, or building inspector, or us as a license issuer, they need to come before us to at least put a face to the applicant for starters, and second of all, they can understand the severity of this underlying issues. Board good with the continuance? So we continue it, close it at 7:47.
Mr. Chairman, in fairness, the first time around, when they absolutely were not ready to go, I told them they were going to continue the hearing, so that's probably why they didn't appear the first time.
Okay, we'll just have to
Yeah.
make it, I understand it's incumbent on them to
Respond.
get to the proper town officials and to respond to us.
Well, can we do this? We're tabling it to an unspecified future date, which is what I think we should do. It should not be continued to the next meeting. It should be tabled until such time as data can be presented to us, which means that they're gonna have to meet with, and we're gonna have to hear from the building inspector. So I would not want to carry over and have a public hearing, reopen it at every meeting until it's time to reopen it.
If I could just make a suggestion, I'm going to suggest that the town administrator sit down with the building inspector and review the concerns and issues and identify them, and that after that occurs, there can be a reach out to the applicant, simply to say, these are the issues that need to be identified, and see if that applicant comes back to the administrator and/or the building inspector to say, look, I've got it, I understand, here's what we're planning on doing. And if there's a failure to respond at that point, then I think you can make a more informed decision. One of the things that you are deciding as part of a Class 2 license is whether or not the individual is a proper person to operate the business. That's a pretty broad standard. Certainly responsiveness to town inquiries and town official inquiries about identified concerns. I think you could take that into consideration, but you should have a record for that.
Right, and I think when we've done that, Mr. Chairman, we've done half of that. That's what generated the letter from the building department, so we're halfway there. I sat down with Nelson, we identified the issues, I asked him to provide a letter, and we notified the applicant.
Okay, so could I ask that the minutes reflect that this issue is tabled to a future date to be determined after consultation with the town council building inspector? I don't want people to read the minutes and think it's tabled to the next meeting. It's not. It's to be tabled to a future date.
Doesn't tabling automatically bring it up to?
That's how we usually do
That's
it.
how we always do it. Anytime we say table, that automatically
Well,
doesn't
our
require a vote.
procedure has been the tabling goes to the next meeting.
Right.
That's been our procedure. So if you table this public hearing, and it's on the agenda for our next meeting, you have to open a public hearing. And I think that's wasteful activity and I don't think it's gonna be ready for our next meeting, to be honest. I just wanted to be clear that it's tabled to a future date, but not necessarily to our next meeting.
Well, Mr. Chairman, through you to town council, will we have to notification requirements if we just have an undetermined continuation?
I'm just going to suggest that you postpone action, right? And then after you've had that meeting and you've had the opportunity to have a dialogue with, if you are able to have a dialogue with the applicant, you'll know better when this issue should come back before the board, whether it's even necessary to come back before the board, and whether or not you need to do any advertising.
So, Attorney Randazzo, we can postpone without a definitive date,
Yes, this isn't town meeting.
okay?
I mean, look, communication is important, and communication with the applicant is important, because if there's simply been a miscommunication issue here, we want to make sure that the applicant is clear as to what's being required of him or her. So I think, you know, we don't have to follow the precise rules of parliamentary procedure here, and you can postpone action on it pending further information and further communication from the town administrator.
So instead of tabling, instead of continuing, well, we can't use the word, we use the word postpone as opposed to continue.
Yeah, yes.
Postpone until further information is brought forward where the administrator deems it necessary to reconvene the public hearing.
That's good.
Is that okay? Is that okay,
Yes, please.
Attorney?
Do you need a motion, or just, that's
No,
it?
that's it. And at this point, we will continue the public hearing under the guise of what we just said. Next up, old business, amendment to the pilot with Nextamp Dudley Solar LLC. Vote to approve First Amendment to payment in lieu of taxes pilot agreement due to a decrease in power being generated in an original agreement tabled from 6/17. Specific recommendation of administrator and council. So I'm going to try to summarize what Jonathan said in his administrator's report, and stop me if I'm wrong, Jonathan or Attorney Randazzo. A lot of things were said at the last meeting, wondering why the amount was lower than was projected. A lot of conjecture, a lot of speculation, people from the crowd, people from our board. So the figure that the original amount was based on was what was provided in the original agreement. The fact that they're not generating as much has nothing to do with rain. They're dialing back manufacturing capability. They're not trying to generate less power to make less money. They're at total operating capacity and just did not reach what was anticipated. And they're looking to adjust the amount slightly downward. You and Attorney Randazzo provide information that they didn't provide a completion date of project, so we're going to hold them to the full amount that was agreed upon. Now we're voting to amend it to the lower amount.
So, close, Mr. Chairman.
That's- I was trying to get
We're almost
close.
there. We have a payment in lieu of taxes on property that's placed on property the town doesn't own. It's the solar panels, the things that generate the electricity are what we're getting payments based on. The amount of their property placed on that piece of property is what we're basing our payment on. Nothing to do with generation, it's the actual amount of power that that equipment can produce.
Correct.
And they got as close to the 2.6 as they could through engineering and everything else. It came to 2.4, that was the adjustment. That's why there was a 30-day completion date to be provided, so that we could take one more measurement to see where we stood, as close to the original 2.6 that is they could possibly get. They got the 2.408, whatever close, but not quite there.
Right.
So we're receiving payment based on the taxes, their property that's placed on that piece of property.
Right, so the bottom line is, a lot of stuff that was discussed at the last meeting, we wasted, I don't want to say waste, wrong word. They're doing the best they can as a bottom line. Nobody
Right.
dialed back, it wasn't the rain, it wasn't
Right.
lousy weather, it wasn't clouds.
Correct.
So now they're just looking to be adjusted to the correct amount.
So if they shut off if none of it was generating any profit for them, but the stuff was still there, we still get paid. There's no benefit for them to leave that stuff there if it's not working. They will take it off, and it will be returned to its original state. If they want to place more there, we'll get paid on more equipment being placed there.
Just based strictly on their capacity. Attorney Randazzo. Feel confident defending your
What he said.
recommendation?
What he said.
So really, a pilot isn't, even though I've heard some discussion about it in terms of revenue generation, it's really a way to structure and to get predictable tax return on, there's got to be an equivalency to some degree on what you would be able to get in tax revenue on the equipment and on the items that are on that site on a yearly basis, but you get the agreement from the property owner as to what that's going to be, and it has some approximation to what you would get on an annual basis in tax revenue. And then you also, they're agreeing to that. There's not going to be the possibility of annual applications for abatement or reduction. So that's really what a pilot does. It gives you stability and structure over a longer period of time as to what is going to be the taxes that will be generated on that. And it's tied to what's on the land. It's tied to the actual equipment and how that's assessed and valued.
Any board member questions for Attorney Rendazzo? Mr. Joseph?
However, the language that allows them to request a reduction will remain in the original contract. So can either you, Mr. Town Administrator, or you, Michelle, can either of you foresee any circumstances justified under the contract language that would permit them to come back for an additional reduction?
So I will never, ever guarantee you anything, because if I could guarantee you anything, I'd be out playing the lottery. But my solar folks tell me that generally speaking, once these facilities are built, the size rarely changes significantly. So I can't guarantee you, that nothing will ever change again, but the facility's built. It's there, and it's likely to remain fairly constant, unless, of course, something doesn't work.
Yeah, not everything is foreseeable. I agree. So my question is, if we're going to amend this contract, original pilot agreement, is there anything to prohibit us, or would you advise us not to include language that should they request any reduction in payment in the future, that would be accompanied by a profit loss statement for solar production with that company via this site?
So I kind of think it's apples and oranges, right? Because we're talking about the property valuation of the real estate valuation of the property itself.
Right.
And your assessor, as I'm sure, this pilot was before our time, but I'm sure the assessor looked at this pretty closely and came up with what that figure was going to look like.
They did.
We did suggest some revisions to the amendment that was proposed by
Dudley
whoever, the developers. And we did suggest including some language that there wouldn't be a reduction prior to the third year of the contract, for example, which is to take into account the fact that we didn't get the notification
Perfect.
until later, but.
Perfect.
And Mr. Chairman, I have that amendment, our amendment to their proposed amendment, prepared by our attorneys, that does include the issue with the completion date. The date was achieved on August 11, 2017. The first written notice that we received was June 12, 2019. So as far as we're concerned, that's the effective date of the capacity of the project when the reduction occurred, was on June 12, 2019. So whatever they paid that prior to that is on them. There's no
I think it's
going
called
back.
the tough cannot clause.
Yeah. So here it comes.
Okay.
Any more questions for town council?
But I want to be clear that what we're being asked to do is to approve this amendment as we've received it, and to authorize a town council and town administrator to offer that to the solar company, is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, what we are being asked to approve is not to, you're not being asked to approve the amendment as we've received it. You're being asked to approve the amendment as we're proposing
They've
it,
already
which just
signed it.
changes that completion
These
date.
fellows already signed it. So we vote to
Already
accept
signed
it.
I don't, did Dudley Solar sign our proposed revisions? I'm not aware of that.
No,
No,
What's this?
that's the first
no,
one,
that's,
isn't it?
that's,
That's the
Oh,
original.
that's
that's just a
okay.
schedule of,
Oh, that's-
it's coming around, Mr. Chairman. It was literally provided today. the
All right,
finished
so
product.
could someone clarify once again what we're voting on?
We're voting to sign our proposed amendment to the contract, which mirrors everything they asked for, except it adjusts the completion date to June 2019 as opposed to 2017.
And this is not that amendment.
It's in Mr. Johnson's hand right now.
So the answer is, this is not that amendment.
I can't see it at the moment.
The
In
packet?
our packet.
That's his First Amendment.
That's the proposed amendment. This is the one that we're,
And is that one different from this one?
yes, it includes the language that changes the completion date.
Okay.
Just, that'll help you. This is,
Okay.
the red lines are what we suggested adding. And so my suggestion is that you're voting to approve the First Amendment with town council's additions and go back to Dudley Solar with that language.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, I need to have that clarified, thank you.
Marcia
So
Wagner?
you did- she did get it, okay. All right. It is the one in your packet, Mr. Joseph.
There's a lot of
Oh, it is
red.
in there?
We're just adding stuff.
Well,
Oh, yeah, there it is.
whenever I see red, I think back to high school, and
I think it's purple, Carrie, actually.
it is purple, thank you for that.
Good evening.
Wagner, 27 Hickory Drive.
Oh, sure.
Attorney mentioned at the beginning of this discussion that it affects town revenue. And so my question is, to the attorney, does Mass General Law require this to go to town meeting for a vote rather than the Board of Selectmen's vote?
Good.
Through you, Mr. Chairman? No.
I didn't hear
She
that.
said,
I'm sorry.
no.
I said no.
Oh, okay.
Any further questions? Hearing none. Paul, are you comfortable with your first motion? You want to reword it?
Is anybody uncomfortable with that initial motion? And if you don't remember it, Michelle, could you restate it, please?
So that the,
Mr. Chairman, it has been a while.
It has been.
Which one?
I wasn't sure which Michelle you were asking to restate it.
Sorry. I don't know if we
No,
settled on
you
that.
really kind of,
We didn't settle on one.
Did I say it really
more
quickly?
paraphrase.
That's what we have in front of us.
Paul Joseph motion to approve
That's
the
different.
proposed amendment and authorize the town council and town administrator to offer Dudley Solar LLC
She got it in.
It is
the
one we
amendment
have.
dated today, or this date.
So I might just clarify the motion a little bit.
Sure.
I would say that the Board of Selectmen authorizes the approval of the amendment with town council's recommended revisions, and authorizes the town administrator and/or town council to go back to Dudley Solar with those
Oh,
revisions.
I couldn't have said it myself, so moved.
Second.
Put an asterisk next to that, Michelle.
Right.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous.
Try to get them to sign it first, that's good practice.
Next up on the agenda, Town Administrator Performance Evaluations. Mr. Administrator.
Mr. Chairman, I provided my job description by email, as Mr. Joseph suggested, and is required to be attached to the back of my evaluation. I wanted to give the board a couple of weeks to take a look at it, see if there are any changes, edits, additions, deletions, subtractions, or inclusions that you wanted to make to that. And also, we gave Mr. Joseph a chance to think about the weight he wanted to assign to each duty.
Is everybody comfortable getting their information back to the administrator?
Yep.
Everybody comfortable with the form as presented?
Yep.
Hearing none.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, Mr. Johnson?
one thing I would like to see, and I'll formulate this in a different method, would be a set of goals that would be A lot of people throw around this term SMART goals. And, you know, they're specific, they're measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. What you don't want to have is open-ended, it should be project-based or goal-based with, that's measurable in some sense. Not everything is measurable to Mr. Joseph's comment, but most things are. So, in going through the list of the performance criteria under employee, community, intergovernmental relations, I'm sure there's some metrics that tie into each of those key bullet points that could at least be tracked and present improvement plans or some way to measure it and based on the actions of the town administrator.
Which page you on, Jay? 3?
4.
4, I mean?
4.
The last category?
Now, some would say you couldn't measure morale, but I've been part of quite a few engagement surveys which ask open-ended questions and try to get to a sense of the morale of a team, or at least see what, you know, how they feel about the management of the team, which is one option to measure those things. And you start with a baseline and work your way from there, but that's just one example of how you tie in what appears to be more about emotion and get it into a metric.
So you, I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman?
Okay, sorry.
Jay, are you suggesting, and by the way, if you are, I'm agreeing with you, but are you suggesting that number 3 and probably number 6 ought to be restated in measurable ways, and that additionally we understand that anything that is not ongoing would have a specific completion date listed?
I'd agree there's opportunity to better define those criteria in a way that you can measure them. A better example might be represents the town to media as chief public relations spokesman. As events happen or actions happen, you know, you can define what you did, why you did it, what was the resolution, and you know, it just shows good analysis of a problem, sound decision-making and actions to remedy or improve a situation. There's a lot of ways to document things. Don't want to throw a lot of company names around, but the Toyota system uses very simple forms to organize a problem statement and explain what actions need to occur to solve some problems. So I just want to take some of the nebulous nature out of some of these bullet points. They're all great. They're all indicative of what needs to happen, but in more an esoteric method, a more esoteric description as opposed to something you can define and measure.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be more,
Job description.
right, that, not job description, that'd be more something that the administrator would provide to us when it comes time for the benchmark reviews, or even an annual review. Wouldn't that be something where the administrator would come back to us and say, okay, making it up. I noticed morale in the town hall appeared low. I created a open-ended questionnaire to gauge factors that maybe contribute to that. This is what I did. Here was my situation, my task, my action, my result. We call it a STAR. Situation would be the morale, the task would be how I address it, the action would be an open-ended survey or somehow an anonymous, and the result he came forward with, I think that'd be more it'd be incumbent upon him as opposed to us, because we consider and say, okay, the morale's gonna be awful in the town hall. Well, I'm using it as an example. We can't anticipate that it will be. We consider and say, Jonathan's gonna have to deal with a tornado like Greg did, but we can't prove it. You know what I mean? We can't, I think some of these things, and I believe a lot of this came out of the town administrator bylaw. I think some of the things and the examples given, I think that's things he has to provide us. This is what happened, this is how I dealt with it, not we say to him, what if this happens, how are you gonna deal with it?
Mr. Chairman, I don't disagree at all. It should absolutely come from the town administrator, but the goal should be, and measurement methods must be agreed before the actions take place and the results are given. Otherwise, things can be misconstrued in description of the performance.
I agree with both of you. You're both absolutely, and Jay, I'm glad you brought it up the way you did. You're both right. Let us keep in mind, this is an annual review. So my assumption is that, number one, everything needs to be measurable. Not quantified, but measurable. And that can be subjective. It can be comparative, better. All right? It doesn't have to be numerically quantified. But it does have to be measurable, and some of these things are not measurable. Some of the statements, I'm going to assume that some of these statements are ongoing, that it is an ongoing process, that this is not something that'll be completed in this year, this first year. And I think that there needs to be rewriting a little bit that includes some steps or some measurable steps that you can achieve, reasonably achieve this year. If not, to indicate that it's an ongoing goal, but your anticipated achievement towards that goal for this year will be the following. And then it's measurable and can easily be graded and rated.
So wouldn't that be the direct result of us adopting this? And that, once again, was time for the benchmark reviews. 'Cause we have some benchmark reviews built into this contract, right?
Right.
He would come to us and say, whatever, performance criteria number 4, this is what I did. Recruit and assign best available personnel. This is what I did. I took someone from this department and someone from
That's
that
an easy
department.
one. But Jay brought up 3, and I added 6 under the, on page 4. And I think those aren't easily measurable the way they're presented.
Right, because we're not giving him a standard as what to measure it by. I think he needs to make, the situation would be develop the good staff morale. His task would be, what do I do? His action would be, how would I do it? And here's my result. What if he comes in and the morale's outstanding, there's nothing to do, so we're just gonna throw number three out?
No,
So how will we evaluate an outstanding situation he walked into?
it needs to be scaled down to a measurable.
I think like
What-
we did with
wait,
another
wait.
topic earlier, it moves down on his priority list.
Yeah, but if it's part of his 8-step that he has to provide us when it comes time for us to do an evaluation of him, how low can it be down the priority list? I mean, these numerical rankings aren't 1 through 8, aren't?
Well, John Massey wants to talk, but my final position is that they need to be reviewed so that they can be measurable during this first year.
I must be, maybe, I must be missing something, because how can you review something that may not exist? So if he comes to us and says morale was great,
Then
we
he
give him-
needs to have a different goal.
I must be missing something.
The goal, Mr. Chairman, was to paint the town hall, and it was painted. You've achieved the goal.
Correct, but what if you came in
If
and
you
you...
painted it a week before you thought you were gonna be done, you've met or exceeded expectations. If you didn't finish in time, you're below expectations.
What if you came in and didn't need to be painted? You're
Well,
gonna,
then you wouldn't set it as a goal.
well, it already is, because the town hall, in our opinion, we need the town hall painted. You come in and say, no, you don't, we say,
Well,
too
I
bad, we
wouldn't
told you. You know, I'm
Mr.
just
Chairman, that's where the negotiation has to happen. It comes with a proposal,
Yes,
we review it,
yes.
make our recommendations. It's called catch-ball, it goes back and forth.
So I agree with that description, but my point, and other side, I could care less. I'm gonna vote for it as is, but my point being, how can we give him a goal to a problem that may not exist without him coming to us and saying the problem doesn't exist?
Well,
Or
that's
am
what-
I
right,
being,
well, that's the
am I
whole
being
point of-
obstinate?
Mr. Chairman, that's the point of this.
Sorry.
We are setting, we're agreeing to and setting goals that we agree are attainable and achievable and measurable. You're agreeing to it, I'm agreeing to it. If you say the problem doesn't exist, we don't agree to it, we take it off the list.
This isn't my evaluation, it's yours. You're gonna come to me and say the problem doesn't exist. So, in that scenario, we're creating a measurable metric to a problem may not exist.
But it's
But
part
your
of,
response would be, it doesn't exist, but it's already in here as something you have to address. So I don't understand why we have to, why we should define a solution to a problem, unless I'm missing something. We try to define a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. And I'm only using that one as an example because it's an easy one.
so I
we
guess
task
that's
you-
what this
sorry.
exercise is all about. If we're talking about it now, and you're saying it doesn't exist,
I didn't say that.
No.
I said you may find out that it doesn't exist.
Mr. Chairman, when the analysis happens on looking at all these topics, and you find that the current state is satisfactory to all parties, then you might not have any actions, but action might be to maintain the current state, not make an improvement. There might be no action.
So, all right, listen, I'm gonna accept it as presented. If we're gonna try to amend it, it's the board's pleasure. So, Mr. Massey,
You guys all make good points.
don't be in the middle, go one way or the other.
You know what I'm gonna say.
I like to pick on you.
I do this in real life too, you know? And like to Jay's point, I do these quarterly with my team. This just started Q3, right? So now I take our annual goals and then I chunk it up into what I want to get done in Q3 by person, based on what my boss said, right? So it's our job as the executive board to tell Jonathan the major buckets that we want him to work on, right? He's sort of given us the buckets to do that. It's up to him to kind of propose, here are my goals. Every year or every quarter, I always have someone who does something similar to what Jay said. And I'm okay, it might be a little soft for, depending on what the bucket is, right? He could reword some of this to make it more, especially around time bound. I could do this by, you know, this month or this quarter, or the end of the year. I mean, we do things in annual, right? That's okay. But, that stuff flows back. He's proposing his goals to us based on the initiatives that we say we want done.
And honestly,
That's what
Mr.
he's
Chairman,
doing.
I
That's what he's
was
doing.
putting this down to give the board the opportunity to
Yeah.
finesse and get into what they want it to be.
Yeah, so if you tell Jonathan, hey, you know what? I don't like the fact that you have, something on the budget, you forgot that. And you tell him that, then he adds it, and he proposes some metrics, whatever system you wanna use. Smart, whatever, star. Be agile about it, that's the new term. Toyota's a little.
What's the board's pleasure?
I work in tech, he works in manufacturing.
Want to take another bite at it, Mr. Chairman?
What's the
Yes,
board's
please.
pleasure?
Yes, please.
Your time is my time. My time is your time.
So,
Whatever you
at
wanna
the
do.
beginning, when I said, everybody have a chance to review it, we all set with it, did anybody send in any recommendations? The answer was no, but now we're gonna back up a step
Yep, I
and send
should-
in recommendations.
I shouldn't have said no.
Well, nobody else said yes,
Well-
either.
But I like the format. I like the format that he has here,
Very
right?
much.
And, you know, like I said, make some more, I mean, the employee, community, and government, intergovernmental relations, I mean, that one's you gotta do anyway, but it doesn't need to be like, some of these other things with the budget, you can quantify that a little bit better. I think it's,
I'm fine with it the way it is,
yeah,
James.
I mean,
I will admit to having been remiss in not getting back to you on those things that clearly are gonna be difficult to measure, And people are gonna find that out when it comes time to evaluate the year. I should have done that, I didn't do that. I will promise to do that before the next meeting.
So what's the board's pleasure?
So I think, Mr. Chairman, Jonathan should propose something to us for us to react to, is how you...
This is it, Mr. Chairman.
So, again, I will ask, if we're not gonna take any action on this, and people have questions, concerns, or potential revisions, to memorialize them, not speak amongst ourselves, present them for inclusion, exclusion, discussion at the next meeting, so we can move on this, because as part of his contract, we have some time-sensitive dates.
Today, right? July 1st was some...
December 3rd is the progress review.
But there was a,
So
okay, is the board good with that? Do we need a vote on that?
the first one's gonna take the longest.
Can I just ask a question, because I'm confused a little bit? This looks like an evaluation tool, an actual form to conduct an evaluation.
Correct.
The trend right now with administrators and managers is to, in addition to having the tool, to have a goal-setting meeting, right? And where Jonathan is new to the position, you know, you would normally expect that there would be some dialogue between the board and the administrator as to what you see as goals and the priorities moving forward, right? Because, and then you collaborate on establishing what those goals are, and you can then measure his performance based on achievement of that goals. The trend is also, although it varies a bit, you know, some places will tie bonuses or merit increases specifically to how much you've achieved of those goals. So I'm hearing sort of a desire to have more concreteness in terms of what you're going to measure him on. And I just looked at this now, so I'm really giving it off the top of my cuff, and I haven't had the benefit of your prior discussions on this. But it looks like a tool to me. And if you don't also have that defined goals, or at least, you know, recognizing that in the first 6 months, maybe these are the immediate goals and maybe there's more thereafter, that maybe that's where some of the disconnect is coming between the document that you're looking at and some of the concerns that are being identified. And if I've just monkeyed up all of your discussion, then I apologize.
Mr. Chairman, that does make sense, because, you know, you have you have this form that has the general topics listed, and then you have the details behind the plans. So I wouldn't be upset with you know, moving forward with the general topic on this document, but the details of how each one of those that we agree is performance being you know, fair, good, or excellent should be indicative of that data that backs up the form. And that doesn't have to be decided today.
What he said, Mr. Chairman, that's right. The goals are here. He has our goals, and he put it in there. It's up to us to tell him that, you know, him to tell us how he would accomplish said goals. And it's up to us to approve it.
See, John Marcy, I disagree. I don't think the goals are there. I think
Well, the buckets.
the statement of duties are here in a reworded form, but they're not the goals. And these can easily be turned into goals, and that we want to go back to something that's measurable. As Jay said, right now it's nebulous. I would not approve this without having something more measurable in wording. And that certainly can lead to a specific setting of goals and objectives.
So if I hear the town council correctly, we should schedule a meeting which clearly spells out the board's goals and objectives?
So my recollection of the employment contract, and I don't have it in front of me, I think that was contemplated, but John might remember more specifically, because obviously you signed the thing. But, you know, we did deal with performance evaluation in there, and it just is very common in town administrator and town manager contracts right now to include a specific goal-setting collaboration. Now, it could be the full board with Jonathan, it could be you could delegate it to the chair or one of the members to sit down and have sort of that initial discussion. It also may help in defining priorities, right? Because I'm sure that as Jonathan walks into this job, there's a lot that's flying at him all at once. And, you know, just as your discussion a little earlier about the wage and compensation study, where does that sit on your priority list? I think it's important for him to have that type of understanding of what your priorities are as a board for him, and have that dialogue so that he can say to you, this is realistic within this time frame, or this is not realistic within this time frame because I've got all these other fires that need to be dealt with. So whether it's a board meeting or whether you delegate to one member to sort of have that initial dialogue and then come back with a proposal, that's the product of that collaboration. You could do it either way.
So, final time, I'll ask, what's the board's pleasure?
I think that's what we did for Greg the first time when I was chair. We had a meeting.
You and he, I don't remember, was the whole board?
Yeah, it was me and him. Based on the stuff we would talk about. It was the big things, right? The budget, and goes around the budget, and I can't, how many years ago was that? 5 years ago? I don't know the exact things.
So do the members want to send me individual things they want to see incorporated into an action plan or
Mr.
or
Chairman,
objective plan, or we want to do an open session?
I'd argue you want to have a collaborative approach to creating the goals. One thing it'll also help us do is create a rhythm and standard to working together on how to create one of these plans, because I'd argue it should probably end up with a standard we can use in many other areas. Once again, this is like the previous discussion of when we do things, you didn't use the term willy-nilly, but seat of our pants, I think was, you know, without a standard, everything's gonna be different all the time. I'd prefer if we could set standards and create goals that are that make sense for the town administrator and the town and the board.
Chair will entertain a motion going forward.
I'll make a motion that, and I might need to reword this, but I'll make a motion that we as a board forward our concerns and requests for inclusion to the chairman, and the chairman meet with Mr. Ruda as Mr. Marcy did with Mr. Valiakonis.
Motion made, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Marcy. Discussion, Mr. Marcy.
And can I ask my board members to keep that to the high level goal, right? You know, Jonathan knows more about how he's going to accomplish it than we do. It's up to him. It's just like saying, I want Chief Wayner to tell me how many policemen he needs at drafters, right? I want Jonathan to tell me what his plan is for achieving said goal. And then we can read together and get back together and approve.
Does this, Mr. Chairman, does this motion preclude that any of us, in my case, me, that I cannot have a conversation with Jonathan about suggestions on how he can make some of these statements measurable goals?
Mr. Chairman, he's looking for input, so yeah, and I would say, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, but can one selectman, for argument's sake, I know he won't do it, if Paul goes in and says, no, wage study's number one, I don't care what the other four guys say, does Jonathan say, okay, you got it, I'm on it?
Oh, no, I wouldn't do that.
That's why I use that example, because I know he wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I would never do that.
But I'm just saying, it could be anything, could be, I want you to develop a metric for morale for the town hall, I don't care what Sullivan said that night,
Yeah,
that's number one.
I think that's what Paul's getting at, right?
Can I make a suggestion,
Making
Mr.
these
Chairman?
more,
Maybe I won't.
Okay.
Why don't we take Paul, who's who's this side of the pendulum, and we take Mr. Johnson, who's this side of the pendulum, and when we swing them together, I'll be in the middle and I'll catch. Those two will plan my evaluation, and then we'll,
I'm
we'll
not
bring it
sure
to-
it's a fair characterization.
Well, it
We're
kinda
on
is.
opposite sides of the
Well,
fence.
it
I think
really
we're on the
is.
same damn
From my
side.
Same side, but
It's a big
Yeah.
fence.
it's a big fence.
You have two different dictionaries, I'll put it that way.
Otherwise, we'll be doing this,
Mr. Chairman, I'd argue that, you know, whether it's a smaller group or the whole group, it has to be a group activity, because the understanding of each one of the categories is important. If you do it in a vacuum or a silo per se, you are going to just, you're going to get what you deserve, which is a process that won't work for the town administrator and won't work for the board.
Everybody's got to have the opportunity for input.
So we have a motion and a second to send your suggestions to the chairman to review with the administrator to bring back to the board. I'll call that to a vote. All in favor?
Before you call that to the vote, I want you to know that I intend to talk with Jonathan and try to give him some suggestions to make some of these statements quantifiable. If this motion says I can't do that, then I'm not going to vote for the motion.
The motion did not say that.
Did not say.
Okay,
So-
that's fine.
If the mover and the second want to change it, if not, I will call it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
4-1. Any selectmen, now, going forward, to answer Paul's question, outside the motion, anybody that wants to talk to Jonathan, we said can, with the caveat that no said selectman can tell Jonathan outside of notifying the chair that any priority or task is to take priority over what the group comes up with. And I would actually suggest anything you discuss with Jonathan,
I
at
will
least
tell
give me
you
a
about
bullet
it.
point, so I
Yeah.
can include it in my discussion with Jonathan.
Absolutely. I'm fine with that, absolutely.
So we all keep you looped in on whatever we discuss with Jonathan about
Yeah.
this. Good.
Well, I mean, it's, the way we usually operate, Mr. Chairman, is we do it like, it's like the committee, right? When we're negotiating with the, whatever union, is usually like two of us, so.
What?
To Mr. Johnson, that's,
One caution though, John, we gotta be careful, is that, Steve, if you have conversations about the same topic with more than one selectman, and it's a topic that may come before us for a vote, then we're gonna need a ruling as to whether or not that would violate the open meeting law.
I wouldn't do that. If you make a suggestion, again, I'll go back to the Wade study. If you make a, because I know you won't do it. If you make a suggestion, I want Wade study number one, and John Massey says, I want Wade study number one, because I know you wouldn't do that, I will incorporate that when I talk to Mr. Ruda. I wouldn't say that Paul and John said, or I said, I'd say, listen, it appears the majority wants that number one. I'm going to bring that to the next meeting where we have a right, at that point, you folks can say, oh, I didn't know that was you.
Okay.
I
So
won't tell- I won't tell-
I guess my question then,
Right, I
through
won't-
you to the chair, to our town council is, are there some potential pitfalls here?
I'm going to make a slightly different suggestion. All of any indication to the chair about what a performance goal should be or otherwise, all of that is going to come back to the full board, and they should come back in toto, right?
Right.
Steve can have conversation with Jonathan for the purpose of developing, a structure,
A workshop.
prioritization, a time frame for achievement of goals. But all of that, including each individual selectman's recommendation, needs to come back to the full board for discussion in an open session.
Correct. And I wouldn't share what one member said and another member said. I won't share that with either member, saying, oh, that guy agrees with you.
Well, I think this is
Till we
more.
go open.
I think that the issue is that we're trying to find a way to facilitate a more productive discussion, right, when the board meets. And you can do it one of two ways, right? One way is y'all just get in a room in an open session and y'all just start flinging from the hip, right? I think this is important. I think that's important. Another alternative is that Steve and John sit down and they have a discussion and they come up with what they mutually perceive as important priorities. That comes back to the full board, and the full board weighs in on that. The third option is the one that you've suggested. Obviously, any of those communications would need to be disclosed publicly. Because performance evaluation, setting of performance goals, that's all open session.
Right, but I
discussion.
wouldn't discuss it with either
No,
member till it
well,
comes
no, you
public.
wouldn't be having any discussions with other board members, of course.
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Johnson, through the chair, what, can I ask what you would have recommended? Curious how we would.
To the chairman, mentioned a couple times, I think the group has to meet to work collaboratively to understand how to break down each one of those bullet points into something that could be measured, and then agree much quicker on how to document it and put forward. Because I looked at this 15 times, and I don't know if anyone guessed, this is my second meeting. I don't know enough about the 14 different items there that need to be broken down in multiple ways. So I would appreciate a collaborative group goal-setting meeting as opposed to siloed, email-driven communication.
Yeah, but isn't that, I'll get you, John, one sec. Isn't that where we're gonna end up? I'm gonna get suggestions, I'm gonna meet with Jonathan. As Michelle said, we have to come back and open. I'm gonna come back and I'll lay the parameters, and we'll have a discussion at that point too for, what I come back with shouldn't be the final memorialized document, right? Anybody should
No,
have a chance.
no.
We'll do that. We'll have an open session discussion. We're gonna come back with general framework. Well, this is general, a little more specific framework, and at that point, we could really nail it down. If things need to be nailed down. That's how I look at it.
That's not my understanding. For the sake of being fair, Jonathan has to have a document that the results of which he can see where he needs to improve, where he's excelled, and where he wants to set future measurable goals. And that's what we have to do, and to prioritize them, to not prioritize them in an open meeting where we can all participate and back and forth is helpful to all of us, not just a new selectman. It's helpful to me to know how what I see jives with what the rest of you see and what I have to make for adjustments and my own expectations. So I think that once you get the what, then the what ought to result from the kind of discussion the town council has recommended that Jay has said he welcomes.
John Lassie?
So you're thinking more of a workshop, Mr. Johnson, right? I may reconsider my vote on this because for the first time, we have been pretty bad about this the last several years, about really holding people with goals. And if we're setting direction, Jonathan needs direction so he can like do the job he wants to do. So would it make sense if we had a workshop with all of us to kind of, because the reason, I don't know if I speak for the board, I think I do. The reason we proposed this, it's sort of how we've been working, just from how everybody has other things going on. Okay, here's what I'd like to see. Steve collates it, talks to Jonathan, and they all report back. So, like the committee approach, like that seems to work, but so we don't have scheduling problems getting 5 guys in a room, right? So that's sort of, I get, well, that's why I voted for it, because, you know, in reality, that's how it will probably work. But I really like his suggestion that we do work on it together. Just that way, there's no doubt, right? There's everybody's open with what the goals are, and then let Jonathan, you know, come back and whatever. We're not getting into like the details of like the exact metrics. You know, I want to be in a case to approve them, right? This is the direction. These are the high level goals. Jonathan, you know, that we all talk about. Jonathan goes away, puts it more like metric-y type things, to coin a phrase, and then we approve.
Well,
My 2 cents.
I saw a couple
again,
moving.
at the risk of someone has to be in charge, we took a vote, we took a motion, so there's certain ways to undo that vote, but we already have a vote approved by the majority of the board.
I just wanted to explain.
I'm just saying, you said something about changing,
No, I mean, I could be convinced to do that because he's not wrong.
I didn't say it was.
All right.
So,
It just, reality is, that's how it works.
so we have a path that's been approved and laid out, so if no one,
Mr. Chairman, won't be the first vote I lose.
oh, listen, I've been there with you many times. I think we should meet every week, so we're not here till 9:30 tonight, but nobody else wants to.
Mr.
Second
Chair,
that.
So we have it
Mr. Chairman, if I
approved.
could just pop in, what Selectman Marcy said is exactly what's going to happen, right? It's just a matter of whether there's anything that happens
Before it, correct.
Right.
Same thing with Mr. Johnson said, we're gonna come back in a group forum.
I knew we kept you around for a reason, John Massey.
What was that?
Geez, I'm
I just wanted to clarify it.
pretty sure I said that like 15 minutes ago, but that's all right.
All right, can we move on?
I don't know, you guys wanna beat it up some more, go ahead. I asked 6 times, what are you gonna do, so.
We've already had a few moon
About 7.
phases since we began this
How
conversation.
about number 7? Compensation study, 2019, I think we talked about that enough. We have the avenue that we want to head down on that one, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
New business, Dudley Women's Club. Mary Ellen Huck, Andrea Kane, who I met in
Thank
the
you to
elevator
these
tonight.
people who've been so patient.
Should have brought her up first, I feel terrible. Permission for a parking waiver on Center Road, Saturday, July 20, 2019, from 9 to 12 for Inspiration Garden Tour. We always ask, have you guys spoken to the chief about it yet? Police chief?
Yes.
Police chief, you have a problem with it? He has no problem. Give you a chance to plug your show before we take it to a vote.
Chief Wonder, you okay?
I'm hearing you, Steve.
I'll give you a chance to tell us a little bit about why you want the parking waiver before we
Okay,
take it to a vote.
So Destination Dudley has been a big subject tonight, and I'd like to introduce a different destination, and that is Dudley. We do a garden tour. This is our 3rd garden tour, and we attract people from all over the region and even Boston to come out and see the beauty of Dudley. So it's scheduled for July 20th, and it's being held, the check-in is at the Grange on Center Road. And the reason really for the waiver is because in the past, we've had about 50 people come to the garden tour, and a bunch of us went to the Woodstock garden tour last summer, and they had 200 people. So this is just kind of an insurance policy, you know, on our part to hopefully have enough room on, and that's why we would need Center Road. Now, that people only come and spend about a half an hour checking in at the Grange, and then they get a program with a map and the list of gardens, and then go off on their way. But again, we just wanted to be sure that if our numbers do increase a lot, that we have parking available for folks.
Absolutely.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
And there's no fee for this. People can come for free and do it.
Parking is
Oh, no.
free.
No, but what's
Parking is free, but the
is there a
tour
fee
is-
for the tour?
Let me talk, if I may, just a little bit about the garden tour. We have 4 gardens in Dudley, private gardens, and the garden hosts are just great. They open up their hidden gardens to our garden tourists. And so we have 4 in Dudley, and we moved to Charlton this year too. So we have 3 gardens in Charlton, and I've been working with the town of Charlton on that also. So, and it's $20
$20.
in advance, and you can get, you can find out more information, and I understand it's Dudley Garden Tour, dudleywomensclub.org. And I understand that a camera might be zoning in for our
It
folks
is.
at home.
It is.
So,
We're on TV right now.
so, I'm sorry, your other question?
Nope, that was it.
I
Yeah,
have
and the
one
reason that
question.
there is a fee, obviously, the Dudley Women's Club is a volunteer organization. We make donations through, we do scholarships, we do a variety of donations, and this facilitates some of those donations.
Excellent.
And it's neat to have Andrea Kane, who is our president, speak a little bit about the club for new people to Dudley who might be watching tonight, because we are always encouraging people to join our club.
This is the, how many annual?
It's not an annual, it's, we did it as an annual for the first 2 years, and then, so we think we're going to be doing it maybe every other year. There's a lot of planning involved.
And this is what, the third or fourth one?
This is the third. We do multiple fundraisers. This is one of them. This is one that we do in the summer, totally different than everything else that we do. And it does generate the interest, like she said, in the past 50 people, with the potential of many more.
And I should say also that we, the money that the Women's Club raises will be shared with 3 organizations or 3 places. One is the Dudley Elementary School. They have a young garden club, so they've started doing gardening, so we thought that would be fun. And then the Grange has a scholarship fund, so part of our profits will go to them, and then to Fay Mountain Farm in Charlton also.
Thank you.
Excellent.
So
we have a
we hope
motion
you'll
and-
all come.
Awesome, guys.
We have a motion and a second to grant the request. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Good luck, ladies.
Thanks for
Sorry to
coming,
make-
thanks for
Sorry to make
waiting.
you wait. We should have took you first, got you out of here.
And I just want to thank you all for your citizen involvement, and I want to thank your families too, because we came at 6:30 tonight, and I know that you do this all the time, so thank you.
Well, thank you,
Thank
Mary
you,
Ellen.
Mary Ellen. Kind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board of Health permission to use the Clarinda Wood Fund, the amount of $3,680 to pay Cheryl Ravinsky for public nursing service provided during January 1st, 2019 to July 13th, June 13th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
The only question I have, in the letter they sent us, it says Harrington Hospital used to charge us $29 per hour. And our new health nurse is only charging us $80 an hour, so see a reduction in fees. How can that be a reduction?
Tom's here.
Tom? Hey, Tom.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Information that you've received was $29. It was $29 every 15 minutes. That's what Harrington had been billing us.
It's a quarter hour.
$29 an hour.
Right, so a quarter hour. Quarter hour.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
That's why it was actually better just to go with a flat rate of $80 an hour.
Right.
So that's 116 versus 80.
Right.
Carrying the.
80's better.
Good.
Sounds like we got a better deal. So,
Motion made and seconded. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for waiting.
End of year transfer votes. Mr. Administrator, you want to just do them individually or give us a number?
So these are number 1 is the FAA reserve account votes that were already voted, so you have to take no action on that. Number 2, on the left side shows the accounts that the money would be coming out of at the end of the year, those accounts that are running a surplus. And on the right-hand side, you'd see the snow, ice, and fire department accounts. There's a slight deficit there in police overtime.
This one? So you just need to vote on number 2, not number 1, right?
We could vote on number 2.
Number 2.
We don't need number 1.
So, Chair will entertain a motion to grant the administrator's request in the total of $125,401.29, unless somebody wants us to read the numbers to get there.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Maybe you can post this on the website, what the actual numbers were to get there.
Okay?
Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. This is a pro forma vote. We need to vote to request legislation from Governor Baker to validate the June 10th, 2019 election. Board of Selectmen needs a sign.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Now you're moving.
Yeah, Town Beach, Selectmen to vote on hours of opening and closing the Town Beach.
Mr. Chairman, my recommendation here is twofold. We're looking at hours to have what we're really looking for is enforcement. So we're looking to set a time for the police chief to have his officers enforce that the beach is closed. Not so much the lifeguard. I'm going to ask the fire chief to speak to the hours of the lifeguard. My suggestion is it opens, it's open at 7 a.m., posted whether or not a lifeguard is not on duty, and it closes at 7 p.m. And that sets some sort of framework for enforcement. Unless the chief hates that idea, and then we can talk about it some more.
No, I'll go with whatever you want to do. The only issue, like I said, we ran into a few times was if people wanted to go there summer nights like this, it stays light until about 8:15, 8:30 or something like that. So But if you want to say 7 to 7, I'm fine with it.
Well, that's my biggest concern. I voiced it at the last meeting. If I knew, I'll take myself, I work 9:30 to 6, sometimes get out at 6:30. If I want to go to the town beach, I get there at 10 to 7. I'm gonna have to leave in 11 minutes while it's still 80 degrees and sunny. I think, Chief, unless you want to contradict, I think we worked well by using the dusk standard.
I go to whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter, whichever way you want to go with it.
That's my only fear. Just someone that works late, it's coming a greater distance, and it's 80 degrees and it's 7:01. I'm not saying you guys are gonna be that militant, but they could be. Somebody could call and say, hey, there's 2 people here.
Well, we would probably get things, and I think that is one of the things that we get, because whatever the rules are, some people would want them strictly enforced, and they'll make a call, and we'll go down there and do it. But same thing, we've been having significant issues, or at least consistent issues with out-of-town folks, so we've been moving people along out of there for the most part as time has gone on. But yeah, whatever you want to do is fine.
Didn't we do dusk, Chief, last year?
I believe it was dusk. I'd have to go back and look at what the posting, whatever the sign
I think
says.
it was. I think that we settled on dusk
Right.
rather than on a time, because brightness changes as the year progresses. So we just settled on dusk last time, and that's what it said on the signs.
I think we posted the hours of lifeguard coverage. And
Right.
other than that, it said park closes at dusk. Beach.
That's why we had those signs, yep.
I'd have to double check the sign, but it's open to whatever the board says or the administrator
I'm
recommends.
good with not making new signs.
So what's the board's pleasure?
I'm okay with I'm gonna move that we establish the hours as opening at
7?
7 a.m. and closing at dusk.
Is there a second?
That this be clearly
Is that
posted
your recommendation?
on
Sounds good with him.
That's fine.
on all
I'm fine with
sides.
Second?
No, Third.
Oh, sorry.
Right. Motion made and seconded. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Dog license pursuant to animal control bylaw, establish fees for dog kennel license fiscal year 2020. Vote to keep the fees at $20 per dog and $50 per kennel.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna move that we vote to keep the fees at their current rates of $20 and $50.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Carrie, do you have a question?
Yeah, how many kennels do we have? Do we have any?
Got the one over by Stevens Linen. He's got a kennel license. I know Board of Health, unfortunately left, there was somebody that was running it, he thought was an illegal kennel type situation in town. I'm not sure how that worked. I know they went to the ZBA at the right, then somebody, they were trying to create
So
one.
there's one.
At least one that I know of, could be more.
I was just curious. I don't.
I think the big one always was excess of dogs and cats. If somebody had, the old bylaw was 3, I think, right? If people exceeded it, they had to come for a license, because of people that were temporarily boarding cats for a nonprofit, and it was in and out. It was. Motion made to keep the fees at 20 and 50. Any further questions or concerns? Hearing none, I'll call to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Board member comments, Mr. Johnson.
One topic that someone brought up to me was the use of the sign out front. Sometimes the first thing they see when they drive, I'm paraphrasing now, first thing people see when they come into town is, the town building, and the sign says, past due licenses now, or something like that. I know it's one way to get information out, but some of the people in town are mentioning, it's probably about some kind of negative news as they drive into town. So I'm not sure, something to talk about at some point, but let that percolate for a while.
Well, the good thing is we do have I believe we have a policy for what can be posted on that sign.
That's within the policy guidelines.
Right.
That particular notification has been up since prior to my being hired, so maybe we could tone it down and take it down if you'd like, Mr. Johnson.
But I know recently that the Webster Dudley Rail Fan stamp unveiling was put up there with the understanding there was a town, like an event for an organization, nonprofit. But I mean, we do have guidelines already in place. I mean,
Yeah.
like, we can't, you know, I can't put on there, hey, my kid graduated high school this year, say thanks, you know. So there are there are guidelines.
Sure, but Mr. Chairman, then, I think the comment would be after 3 months of,
Seeing it.
you know, dog license past due, at some point you want to probably see welcome to Dudley. You know, I don't know if that's in the guidelines to welcome people to Dudley, but.
No,
it
it's
might be
not,
actually. Might be an opportunity.
Well, it doesn't just say dog license, it kind of goes on like a little scroll, there's other things
Yeah.
on there.
So all the people driving through, going to Connecticut, you could say, pay your license.
That's one of the
damn it."
things on the list, Mr. Chairman, that I just haven't, you see it, because I feel the same way, and welcome to my no money. So, I know, we'll address that. I think it's the appropriate use, but maybe
Great
not for
suggestion,
as long as it's been up.
Timeframe, yeah. Well, you know, if people want us to go through this wage study, we have to generate revenue wherever possible,
Yeah.
and overdue fees are part of it.
Mr. Chairman, at some point, the electricity to post that, it consumes
I
more
want
than.
to talk about losing votes, I voted against it. I didn't want this thing. How's that? Mr. Marcy?
That's a great idea by Mr. Johnson, by the way. I have nothing new tonight.
You might have won.
Mr. Sigenovich?
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Joseph?
Nothing?
I just want to close by thanking, like I said, the Webster Dudley Rail Fan Club. We had an excellent unveiling of the stamp commemorating the 150th anniversary of the Spike. And actually, a gentleman who showed up, if you look at that famous picture where they're hitting it into the ground, the guy had a copy. He pointed at one guy and he said, "That's my great-grandfather." So it was kind of neat.
Oh.
He was here. And also, I just want to wish everyone a healthy, happy, safe 4th of July. Celebrate the birth of our country. It's the greatest country in the world. We stand for more things than all the other countries in the world put together. But please be safe. Fireworks are illegal. Our fire and EMS and our police department do not need any extra work out there. Be safe, please, everybody. Department head comments. Mr. Paletta from Highway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick update to the town administrator's report on the streetlights. That project was completed at 4 o'clock this afternoon, so it's 100% done. There was some questions if that's phase one, if there's another phase of it, and a scope of work and time frame for phase two, if such a thing even exists, if we can get that out there. That's it.
Vinny, one quick one. I know we talked in the past. Is there any thought to putting the brush mower back out there and try to whack back some of these intersections? I know you talked about danger, what's under the, but can we set it a couple feet off the ground and just try to,
Well, that's the problem. The blades run into the ground right now. It needs some work, and everybody's been a very short crew. Everybody's on vacation, so it's one of my priorities in July to get it out there.
Yeah.
and stickers, right? Recycling
Oh, yeah,
stickers.
good thing you said that,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Recycling stickers go on sale starting Saturday at the Highway Department.
3 weeks in a row?
3 weeks in a row, correct.
Perfect. And the fee did not go up.
The fees didn't go up, 8 to 12, 8 AM to noon.
Whoa. Would you say that a little louder, please?
8 AM to 12?
Yeah, but I heard the question, did the fees go up?
No.
Okay, good, because all I heard was 8 to 12. I wanted to make sure.
Good. Thanks, Vinny.
Thanks, Vinny.
That's it.
Fire and EMS.
Been awful quiet tonight, Chief.
I was asked to speak about the lifeguards. The hours of the lifeguards will be from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., 7 days a week.
7 days, awesome.
And they're scheduled for their physicals. They'll be starting Wednesday, the 3rd.
Just in time for the 80-plus weather we're going to have the rest of the week.
How many lifeguards?
Just one a shift.
How many total?
We got 3.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
for
Chief.
your work, too, and taking that over a few years ago.
Actually, I just took it over this year.
Well, with the radios, you took over the...
You were doing
Yeah,
great
you
the past
handled
couple
it,
of years,
that's
too.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, just a reminder, we've been working on this, myself, Paul, and Tony. We no longer have code red reverse 911. Some of you probably got a text and email about it. We're rolling out the new Rave 911 system. I would urge all town employees and all townspeople to go on. It's posted on the Dudley Town website, our Facebook page, the department website. Of the link you can go to sign up for it for cell phones. I would go in and get yourself registered because most people have cell phones. Again, we sent out the message before Code Red went down. We're going to have a training session for all department heads in the next couple of weeks after we finish it and get it all up and running. It seems the ease of use is a lot easier than Code Red, and it's web-based, and it just seems like it's also a few $1,000s less expensive, so.
Mr. Joseph?
Have you received any complaints from folks who received an email and weren't able to complete the registration online?
As of yet, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, well, I got 2 complaints that they couldn't do it. They couldn't figure out how to do it.
Okay, well.
Has there been a problem that we know of?
No, but I would tell those people that they're more than welcome to contact the fire station, and we can help them out with that.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Chief, have you solved the problem with, like, I don't get, like, any alerts anymore from fire EMS on just the daily stuff?
Yeah, well, I'll look into that. We were switching over from the old system, well, the old power to the new power. They're doing that new server room with all the radios and everything, and then we had an issue with a bad email, so we started by taking everybody out that wasn't on the department. Then we went through everybody who was on the department, and we reinserted all the names. We might have missed you. We'll get you back in there. You weren't the only one. It's just, it was a total rebuild of the system because we switched over, and then there was that issue. We kept getting that error message because there was a bad email in there, but we're working on it, so you'll be back up soon.
Thanks, man. No,
Yeah.
Thanks, Chief. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick update. We received a gift from Nichols College for about $9,800 to purchase some emergency tactical response kits. So they're kits that we can equip our cruisers with, mostly due to the work of the fire chief. He had approached me with this. I was looking for something that we could get together for, contains things like Narcan and bleeding control measures, defibrillators, oxygen, and a few other things. So it's available for police officers or first responders, especially if they're injured or suffer some traumatic incident at a scene. The equipment's readily available. So the fire chief researched everything, and the college gave us that donation to get these starter kits in place, and we'll work with the fire department to maintain things along the way and replace things as we need to do it. But it was a great work by the fire chief, again, putting us all together, and we thank the college for getting that going. And sad you got to think of it, but it's nice equipment to have now, especially given the conditions of a lot of things.
John, if it hasn't been done yet, can somebody craft a letter for us thanking Nichols for their donation?
Yes.
For me to
Yeah,
sign?
I sent one to the bar, yeah, so.
On
yes.
behalf of the board, too.
But, it was nice. Thank you.
Look forward to continuing our relationship with them.
I actually not going to take credit for this one because other than putting the kits together, the police chief procured the money for it, so you can give him the credit for getting the grant.
Nice to see the cooperation continues with you, with departments. Water sewer, George. George, you put 3 hours, you got nothing to say? Oh, yeah.
He really did, didn't he?
I want one of their meetings, it's 11 minutes they usually meet for. Mr. Joseph.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move that we adjourn the public session and that we convene into executive session, not to meet again in public tonight. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, subsection A6, to consider the purchase or exchange, lease, or value of real property, specifically property located on Odd Lock Place referenced in map 117, lot 76, comma, not 76, but parentheses, 7.41 acres, end parentheses, and under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation. If the chair, and the chair has declared, that having an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the town. And that we would accept at that time town council update on all pending litigation involving the town.
In conclusion of, would constitute adjourning, not gonna come back to open.
I said that.
Motion made,
Second.
roll call.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Carrie Siganovich, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
John Marcy, aye.
Thank you, everyone, and have a
Good night.
safe and happy 4th of July.